It's time once again for another thrilling episode of Markout Radio. For the next hour, sit back, pull the stick out of your ass, and enjoy. Be warned though, smarks and internet know-it-alls will be offended, annoyed, and generally pissed off at what's about to happen to your ear holes. You've been warned. Now, Markout Radio.
No, I won't give in till I'm victorious. And I will defend.
That's right. Gloriousbombs are even on Markout Radio. Sorry. I know I posted them on the site a little while ago, and that was all wonderful, but I can't get enough of Gloriousbombs. I keep finding them all over the fucking place, and I just sit through them. I can't help it. The most funny ones are obviously the ones done by wrestlers. The ones done by, your average everyday wrestling fan they don't seem to be as funny. And I know that I have now thrown my hat into that ring, and for that I will not apologize. So tough shit. For those of you living under a rock, I guess for those of you that refuse to watch WWE for whatever the reason is, I don't give a shit. That is Bobby Roode's theme song, and it is I'm not going to make that joke. It is fantastic. Now that being said, it's a long time since he's been in the WWE. Like, he was in the WWE a while ago, but now he's back again, and that's always good. And for those of you that watch wrestling as much as I do, the insane, crazy, socially awkward to masses, Bobby Roode is fantastic. He's a 6 foot tall guy that's 235 pounds, and yet he looks like your stereotypical Vince guy. And it just baffles me that it took this long for him to find a permanent place in the WWE. He was there before, by the way, back between 2002 and 2004, wrestling mostly dark matches and shit, but mostly jobbing. I'm not going to paint it any other way. Mostly jobbing, which sucks, but whatever. Since, since April Fool's Day of this year, he's been an NXT guy. That's fantastic. Now, for those of you keeping score at home, he is 39. And so there was, listen, I'm not going to lie. I do hang out in the Squared Circle subreddit over on reddit.com. I mostly, I'm not going to lie. This is going to sound horrible and that's just how this is going to sound. But mostly I hang out in the Squared Circle subreddit to be entertained. I definitely don't go there for information purposes. Although every now and then there will be a leak that somehow missed my radar that I'll catch on there, which is fantastic, and I'll give credit where credit's due when it is there. But there was a bit of a conversation, a bit of an argument, a bit of online internet wrestling community heat this week over Bobby Roode as well as a few other guys. Roode, Austin Aries, Samoa Joe, and Nakamura. Were the four that they were talking about this time, and the one guy posting it, I'm not even going to say his username because it's just douche chillingly awful, but he was asking like how long do these guys have to hang out in NXT before they'd be called up to the main roster? And there's a few people that weighed in with interesting ideas, but the one that entertains me the most is whenever people assume that coming to the Royal Rumble somehow means you're being called up to the main roster, which isn't the case. I will remind you that Goldust appeared in the Royal Rumble 3 years in a row before he was rehired back. So it does not mean that you are on the main roster if you appear at the fucking Royal Rumble, so just calm down, Marks. But that being said, I could see all four of these guys making an appearance at either the Royal Rumble or a Rumble-type match. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting was how many people, well, I'm not going to say interesting. One of the things I thought was fucking hilarious is how even watching the WWE and understanding the machine of the WWE, and again, that's not a negative thing, it just is what it is, that they just still hold on to this little hope deep down inside their little cuckolds of their hearts, or cockles, whatever, cuckolds. Slip of the tongue, of their hearts on when these guys are going to get called up to the main roster, not if these guys are going to get called up to the main roster. I really don't see Austin Aries, unfortunately, as much as I love the guy, as much as he's a fantastic wrestler and a nice guy, I just don't see WWE either knowing what to do with him or understanding how to use him properly. I mean, all you really have to do is look at all the little guys that they have, that they brought up, the flippy little guys they brought up. Now, granted, these guys could all make a transition to the Cruiserweight division, but that's a lot like renaming the Divas division to something else. Disparaging. Don't get me wrong, the Cruiserweight division is a great division for guys that have never made it into the WWE, guys that need something, a gimmick, as it were, for the WWE to finally take them fucking seriously like they should be taken. And the Cruiserweight division is fantastic for that. I'm glad that it's back. But Austin Aries, I see, because the ready for TV roster at NXT is so slim, I really don't see them taking Austin Aries and putting him on the main roster. They've got Neville. They've got a flippy muscular guy already. They've got Neville, and they don't know what the fuck to do with him. So what are they going to do? They're going to bring Aries out of NXT, where he is a big shark in a little fishbowl, and they're going to put him on the WWE roster, where he's going to be a little guppy in the shark tank, and they're not going to know what to do with him. They're not going to use him properly. They're going to make fun of it. I guarantee you they're going to make fun of it. And that's just, or they're going to throw him in the Cruiserweight division and have him be the veteran that everyone beats. Or maybe if they fucking get their heads out of their ass, they could actually do something interesting with the Cruiserweight division and turn it into more than just a spot show, turn it into more than just a match or two a night like they do with the women's division. But who knows? But I really, because Aries is so polished as far as a ring presence, as far as his performance goes and everything, I honestly see them transitioning him more into a coach's role than they would be likely to put him on the main roster, as sad as that makes me. Samoa Joe, I mean, I'd love to see him in there. I really would. Realistically, where are you going to put Samoa Joe? It'd be nice to see him take a run at Kevin Owens. Why not? It'd be fucking entertaining as hell matches. Does that mean that they're going to actually bring him up to the main roster, or are they just going to have him come in and as an NXT guy is going to compete? Because don't forget that Sami Zayn came up as an NXT guy and competed for quite a long time before he went up there. So the Glenn's in chat, and he's asking, have the numbers for the Cruiserweight Classic been that good that fans will make a lot of noise for it? See, that's the thing. The Cruiserweight Classic is an awful lot like the Cruiserweight division was back in the 90s. It's a niche, and I think that it's a highly entertaining. Let me put it this way. People that don't watch wrestling a lot love watching cruiserweights do the flippy stuff, because nothing annoys non-wrestling fans more than Kurt Angle type holds and then a reversal and another hold. Because if they really wanted to watch that, they'd watch the UFC, or they'd go watch their high school amateur wrestling bouts. They wouldn't watch professional wrestling. They wouldn't pay for it, by the way. And anybody that says otherwise is drinking the wrong type of Kool-Aid. The thing is that the entertainment value, like PWG, is basically what happens when you take a company and build it around guys that are the cruiserweight style and the cruiserweight size. And that's not to say that they can't do other types of wrestling. I mean, Jack Sabre Jr. is by no stretch of the imagination a flippy guy. He is the epitome of a European style wrestler with holds and hammerlocks and all kinds of shit like that. And it gets over because the PWG fans are like, they're in on it. They get it. And they're not going to cheer for something that's stupid unless they can make fun of it in the process. But anyways, I would love to see Joe do that. Nakamura's going to be another one of those things where if they bring him up to the main roster, honestly just don't know what the hell they're going to do with him. Like right now they've got him as the champion and they're going to just throw opponents at him over and over again, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. It's wonderful. But if they put him to the main roster, they're definitely not making him the champion. It's not going to happen. I mean, it took Kevin Owens 3 years on the main roster before he finally got to be champion. And that was because guys were injured. Like, honestly, this is not the thing is that it really boils down to who's running the book, who's running creative, how much input is Vince is Vince actually putting into the product? Because in my opinion, when Triple H is being allowed to run the book, it seems to work out a lot better, not just for wrestling fans, but in general, it just looks like a better product. But I mean, that is what it is. Now, Bobby Roode, this is where I got heat from the online wrestling world. First of all, I love Bobby Roode. He is fantastic. Plus, he's Canadian. Why wouldn't I love him? But he is 39 years old right now. He will be 40 years old this year. He is in phenomenal shape for 40 years old. He doesn't have a lot of injury history like a lot of the guys his age have. However, does that mean that he's going to make the transition to the main roster and do anything with that? Because really right now on the main roster, it seems to be about the younger guys, and it seems to be about the guys they're bringing up and guys that they're taking credit for creating. And Bobby Roode is, well, he's Bobby Roode, and he's been Bobby Roode everywhere. So it'll be interesting to see if they do bring him up. I see him being another one of those guys that they'll keep him there for a couple of years. He'll be used to help polish younger guys and get them ready for TV. And he'll wrestle and act as a coach, which is basically what he's doing right now. Sorry for busting the glass for you or anything, but the unfortunate thing is that the WWE just fell asleep at the wheel during his window of awesomeness, and I just don't think that they know what to do with an older champion. I mean, Bruno Sammartino was the last older champion the WWE really knew what the fuck to do with, and it wasn't Vince Jr. running the show. It was his dad, who, unfortunately, as much as people might hate this, actually knew how to book wrestling matches. So it's tough. It's really tough. I would love for him to make his way on there, but you never know. Now, in other fantastic, I don't even know what. Normally I have like a little image to use or something like that when I'm talking about something like this, but I don't even have anything for them. So I'm just going to go like this, and I'm just going to do a quick and dirty. Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae got married over the weekend. The cute little pictures, they're up on my Twitter feed. Go have a look at them, and that's the end of that. Sorry, what more do you want me to say? A couple wrestlers got married on a Thursday so they can work Friday night. And Gargano's got his last set of indie tour dates this week, so that's it. And he's made his transition all the way to WWE NXT. And there we go. It'll be great. I'd like to see Candice there, obviously. And the word is that she is going to be there at some point, but who the fuck knows when that's going to be? I really hate to see her there because there's not a lot of chicks that can wrestle against guys and make it look legit. And I really love watching her wrestle. I love watching her work, and she's fantastic. So hopefully she's there sooner rather than later. So back when we were talking about Backlash, and we were talking about how Bray Wyatt ended up in another match. It wasn't against Randy Orton. He just sort of did the kayfabe, I got injured gimmick where he got jumped in the back there. Reasoning for that, by the way, is that he actually legitimately suffered a concussion in his match with Brock Lesnar. Really? Taking stiff elbows to the head gives you a concussion. Who would have fucking thought that? So Randy Orton back from a shoulder injury and now basically on the road doing backstage and promo work because he's got a concussion, which is super awesome. That's so stupid. It just, if you're going to get color, just get color with a blade. Don't try to be all cute and get color hard way with Brock Lesnar, who's a big stiff dummy, doesn't know how to wrestle in the first place, and he's gonna fucking hurt you. I get it. Randy Orton thinks that he's awesome, and Randy Orton thinks that he's God's gift to the wrestling world, and maybe in a lot of ways he is, but Brock Lesnar isn't. Brock Lesnar is a big stiff dummy who brings legitimacy to wrestling, and he busted Randy open the hard way. And what the fuck did you think was going to happen, honestly? I mean, what happened in the ring with him pouring blood out of his head was the best case scenario, frankly. He was knocked out fucking cold for a while there. He was doing that fucking Snorefest deal. Just so stupid. And speaking of stupid, Paige's suspension gets lifted and she celebrates by posting a picture to her Instagram of, well, she got a tattoo. She got a tattoo of the name Alberto underneath her tit. Take the girl out of the trailer park. You can't take the trailer park out of the girl. That's fantastic. By the way, Alberto Del Rio's real name is Jose Alberto. So, Rodriguez. But, it's... anyways. Stuff that broke the internet this week. Adam Cole and Kevin Owens posting a picture of themselves sitting in their hotel room beds with their respective title belts around their waists watching TV. I swear I could smell the cum from all the way over here every time it got shared. Every time people were like, oh, they broke kayfabe and I got WWE title with the fucking Ring of Honor title. No. There's two things you got to understand. Since the late 90s, WWE has owned a pretty big piece of the Ring of Honor. Why do you think they keep getting their talent from there? So their champion sitting with Ring of Honor's champion in a hotel room matters fuck all. I guarantee you that Vince and Triple H and everyone else in the office gave precisely zero fucks that picture was out there. As a matter of fact, the WWE retweeted the picture once. So, and Ring of Honor retweeted about 28 million times. But listen, when you're a smaller venue, of course you're going to do that. Now, speaking of Alberto El Patron now that he's officially out of the WWE, he has announced in a Mexican press conference, so I had to take the translator's word for it, which I always hate doing because they always do a shit job of translating, but whatever. He has announced that he's going to do 60 shows a year for the next 2 years, and then he's going to retire. Now, he's 39, and listen, frankly, he's in great shape. But that's a hell of a retirement year, actually. There's a lot of guys that retire that they don't work quite that many shows. They work maybe a show or two a month as on their retirement tour. So that's actually not so bad. And I guarantee there'll be some, there'll be some AAA in there. There'll be some CMLL in there, I'm sure. The word is still that he's heading across the pond to do a couple shows for Paige's family. And again, that's the British style. So it'll be stiff, which is right up his alley. Alberto Del Rio has always been a little bit stiff, but that's fine. Not as stiff as Brock, but whatever. Now, the other thing that surfaced this week about Alberto El Patron was that WWE, now that he's been shit canned, WWE has released a statement that Del Rio's violation of the wellness policy was due to him testing positive for steroids. Now, I'm going to let that sink in for just a second while I take a drink of iced tea here. Just hold on. Alberto's people, a lot like Paige's people, released a contradictory statement, and the steroids that Del Rio was allegedly on were from his elbow injury a couple of months ago. Some of you may remember that he all of a sudden was wearing an elbow pad for a little while there. It's because he hurt his elbow, and his doctor prescribed him some steroids so that when he was working out, he could build up the muscles around his elbow joint to help rehab. This is very common. Not all steroids are evil. And the steroids that he tested positive for were the ones that were prescribed by his doctor. Of course, when the WWE was confronted with this, they basically ignored everyone saying, you're full of shit. Not that it's any big surprise, but now that Alberto Del Rio's gone, and it looked like it was an amicable split because when Alberto did his press conference, there was no shit talking. When the WWE did their press release, there was no shit talking. And then, lo and behold, Paige is off suspension. She's got a tattoo of Alberto under her tit, and then WWE releases a media release saying that Alberto tested positive for steroids in some way because what I had been talking about on the air here was not. Listen, I'm not the only one that found that shit out about the wellness policy having a mental health rider on it, and that became the news story around Alberto and Paige being suspended at the same time. So whatever. It's It is what it is, and Del Rio's people have said that they really don't give a flying fuck what the WWE says about him. Like he's if he's on his retirement tour or whatever, maybe he'll come back, maybe he won't. If Bret Hart can come back after the way things happened twice between him and Vince, whatever. And by the way, news came out this week that WWE is trying to phase Hogan back in. So after they fired him, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago for all his racist tirades, now they're trying to work him back into programming as well. So you're never totally out. You're never totally gone. If they can make a buck off you, they will. And Del Rio was making too many bucks down in Mexico and with Lucha Underground and everything. So WWE decided to hire him back because, of course, they can pay him more. So why not? Now, like I said, his people don't care enough to file a lawsuit. But the rumors are circulating. The wagons are spinning. And Paige has retained legal counsel, and that was something that has been all over the media. I don't think I broke that anywhere along the way, I'm sure. But what, and it's not a breaking news, but what allegedly her retaining a lawyer was about was that she might be trying to get out of her WWE contract with a big payout because of her WWE suspension being bullshit. So, that'll be interesting. It'd be interesting. I always love seeing when the WWE is the one that gets sued because they do so much. They're so litigious. We've covered that before on the show. They're so litigious. I just love seeing when somebody sues them. And so it'd be interesting to see exactly how this all plays out. I mean, listen, I'm sure she didn't hire some rinky-dink lawyer. I'm sure she hired somebody that actually knows what they're doing. I hope, anyways. But you never know. You just never know. God damn. All right. Now, the other thing that happened this week, and I wish I kept my little picture up. Hold on. Maybe I can change my little picture here. I want to put up my picture of Ryback again because Ryback's back in the news, folks. Yay. Well, it's not really a yay. It's sort of a douche-chilling reason why he's in the news again. So, Ryan Reeves has officially changed his name to Ryback Ryan Reeves, and most people believe that this is in an effort to trademark the name of Ryback. Now, Ryback, I don't know if a lot of people know this. Ryback's a legitimate name. Listen, it's not as popular as say Ryan is, for example, but Ryback is a legitimate name, so the WWE can't really register Ryback, but they can trademark Ryback's packaging. They can trademark how you write Ryback, like with a big fucking R and shit like that. They can trademark the graphics and things like that. They can do all that kind of stuff. But a lot of people were shooting on Ryback this week. And listen, I understand. He's a big muscly guy, and people love to hate big muscly guys because they're Vince's wet dream, right? And that's fine. I get it. It's understandable. I understand where you guys are coming from. But a lot of people were shooting on Ryback this week, thinking that he was changing his name in a lot of the ways that Jim Warrior changed his name. Now, I don't know if anybody watched the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. You know, before the Ultimate Warrior was inducted into the Hall of Fame and the WWE released a new DVD putting him over, there was a DVD that was around for years called The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior, and it was Edge and Christian and Jericho cutting promos on Ultimate Warrior, which is hilarious because those three guys were three guys that were also interviewed for the new Warrior DVD saying how great he was and this, that, and the other. So just understand that they're wrestlers and you are being paid by the WWE to do a certain thing, and burying the Ultimate Warrior was apparently one of those things. But one of the things that was hilarious was that Jim Hellwig changed his last name to Warrior. Now, Warrior cannot, the word Warrior can't be trademarked. It's too common to be trademarked. In order to be able to trademark something, you have to be able to prove that it is you and it can't be mistaken for anyone else. So the fact that he changed his last name to Warrior was a little weird, but it wasn't as though he was trying to, and this is hilarious because this footage resurfaces all the time. It makes me laugh my ass off every time it does. But of Vince being interviewed for the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD, saying that Jim changing his last name from Hellwig to Warrior somehow established some sort of intellectual, some sort of trademark over Vince's intellectual property, the Ultimate Warrior. And it doesn't work like that. Once you've established intellectual property, you can't establish a trademark after the fact. It would have to be before. But the part that Vince always forgets to take into consideration is that the word warrior that Jim Hellwig changed his last name to is not fucking trademarked. It can't be trademarked. It's not unique enough to be trademarked. In the same way as Ryback can't be trademarked because it's not unique enough to be trademarked. It's a different name. It doesn't happen a lot, but it's not unique enough to grant a trademark, even in America. So a lot of the internet wrestling community was blowing up, and of course, entertainment factor just off the roof for me. I love it. I really do, because it's almost as entertaining as watching botches in progress. But this whole thing, they were comparing Ryback changing his name from Ryan Reeves to Ryback Ryan Reeves to Jim Hellwig changing his last name to Warrior. Now, Jim didn't change his name to the Ultimate Warrior. He changed his name to Jim Warrior for a lot of different reasons, but because he started studying Bushido and things like the Way of the Warrior and shit like that, and he started drinking his own Kool-Aid. And listen, that's fine. It's whatever. But it's sort of the same thing. There are two trademarks that you can't establish. You can't establish a trademark over either one of them because they're just not unique enough. So a lot of people are erroneously comparing this to Ultimate Warrior, saying that you can't do that, this, that, and the other. But listen, Jim Hellwig did change his name to Jim Warrior, and when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame as Jim Warrior, and you can not like it, and that's fine, but it doesn't change facts. So unfortunately, that's what ends up happening. Now, a whole shitstorm blew up because of this whole Ryback thing, because there's a couple more, there's another example of a guy that just got released by the WWE by the name of Cody Rhodes. Now, Cody, for those of you living under a rock, his dad was Dusty Rhodes, and Dusty Rhodes, real name, last name Runnels, was Dusty Rhodes. It's kind of a funny little play on words. Has been Dusty Rhodes since the 60s, and the WWE does not own the rights to the name Rhodes. They don't own that. But the WWE does own the trademark on the name Cody Rhodes together. So they don't own the trademark on Rhodes. They couldn't possibly own the trademark on Cody. It's too common a name. But when you put those two words together, Cody Rhodes, they can establish a trademark on that, and they have. So Cody Rhodes can't use the name Cody Rhodes when he's performing for anything that's televised, either pay-per-view, television, whatever. So he was at Evolve, and he cut a promo saying how he was, I can't even remember what the fuck he said his name was. It was Cody something or other. But he cut a promo sort of on the WWE for not letting him use the name Cody Rhodes. Which, I mean, I get it. Like, I understand it. In the gaming world, if you want to equate it to that, Origin still owns the copyright after all these years, still owns the copyright to the name, entire name of Colonel Christopher Blair. And they probably will always hold the trademark on that. They keep renewing it because the Wing Commander universe could always come back in another game. So, by the way, there is a reason why Christopher Blair and the Wing Commander franchise never got promoted past Colonel. So they have this trademark on that whole name. They can't trademark Christopher. They obviously can't trademark Blair. Obviously can't trademark Colonel. But as soon as you put those things together, you can trademark it. Unfortunately, Ryback was a one-name character, which is hilarious for the WWE because they keep taking wrestlers that have last names and then trademarking them. So, like, for example, Bailey is just Bailey. And so they can trademark the name Bailey as it pertains to Bailey with the side ponytail, all that shit. But they can't actually trademark the name Bailey. It's too common a name to do that with. And Emma also springs to mind. Anytime that WWE does this, they shoot themselves in the foot because I think that they're operating under this delusion and their legal department is fucking retarded. That if you have established a quote unquote trademark for the packaging of Ryback, so the bald guy with the beard, with the fucking teeth and the whole gimmick, things like that. They think that if you have established a trademark, an intellectual property on that this wrestler somehow can't reinvent himself, can't somehow use that gimmick as he goes forward. I mean, we had, what was his name again in the WWE? Mason Ryan was as he was in the WWE. The WWE was smart to keep his name Mason Ryan, and it would have been smart to keep Cesaro's name with his original last name he had in the NXT, which I can't even fucking remember anymore. It's been that long. Antonio Cesaro, that's what it was. Fuck, look at that. But because they got rid of that and they just had Cesaro's a common name in Italy, and you can't trademark common names. So every time they do this, I'm sure that they're thinking in the back of their head that, oh, this is going to be easy for the ring guys to say, and then we can copyright and stuff like that. But unfortunately, for names that are that common, you can't do that. I mean, you can try to, certainly, and the WWE's got plenty of money to tie these guys up in court for the next quarter of a century. But it's always interesting to see how, and by interesting, I mean fucking shocking. The WWE just seems to, for such a huge company, for such a big multi-million-dollar company, makes such basic moronic mistakes. And of course, no wrestler is going to correct them. Like, no wrestler in their right mind is going to sit there and correct them. Well, at the time, because why? Because then they're just going to have to come up with a name. Like, for example, Kevin Owens, they can trademark. And they're gonna. Absolutely they are. Why do you think he's not Kevin Steen? There's a reason. So they can trademark it and make money off of it. But when you got Cesaro, which again, common enough name in certain areas of the world, can't establish a trademark on that because it's too fucking common. So it's always fun to see that kind of stuff. And of course, slapping a TM at the end of a name does not establish a trademark either, Vince. I know this is being the bearer of bad news. I've just been doing it all day. Sorry. Speaking of bad news, Mick Foley is well, I think, how do I put this gently? Mick Foley has about lost his goddamn mind. I know this comes as no shock to most people that Mick Foley's out of his fucking mind, but he's now out of his mind, and he's put in a position where more people are paying attention to him as from the wrestling community and stuff. And this with the Cruiserweight Classic, I mean, the Cruiserweight Classic was so over. And I'm hoping that transitions into Raw. I would really love to see it transition into Raw. Will it? I don't know. I want to see it happen, but I think it's going to have some growing pains. I think we're going to be dealing a lot with, they'll do like a sweeper image of the Cruiserweight thing, and they'll have some fun with it. But ultimately, I think it's going to be treated like a gimmick. And nothing more, which I really hope is not the case. I really hope that it gets the credit it deserves, and I hope that they continue on to the Cruiserweight Classic, because it brings a lot of different wrestlers into the WWE that wouldn't otherwise be there, or wouldn't otherwise get the shot that they deserve. But Mick Foley tweeted earlier this week he'd like to talk Romero and Daniel Bryan into calling the Cruiserweight division because they did such a good job with the Cruiserweight Classic. I'm not going to disagree with that. What I am going to say is that Mick Foley is the GM of, or the manager of Raw. And Romero is a play-by-play guy on SmackDown. Granted, he worked on the Cruiserweight Classic, but his gig is as a play-by-play guy on SmackDown, and Daniel Bryan is his opposite on SmackDown. So the first problem here is that Mick keeps putting over the competition. If we're to believe that there has been a brand split, if we're to believe that these are two competing companies and WWE is no longer a monopoly, it's going to compete with itself and all that other bullshit. Which it is bullshit, by the way. But if the gimmick is that they're competing with one another, SmackDown and Raw are competing with one another, then Mick needs to stop putting SmackDown over, because he does it every fucking week. He does a promo. Every week he's putting SmackDown over. And he should, but kind of not his job. Now, that being said, the stupidity of that alone is enough to have a problem with Mick being in charge of his own Twitter feed. They should really get an intern monkey to come and help Mick, because he clearly doesn't remember how the wrestling business works. But that alone is stupid. But it gets worse. And I know you're wondering, how the fuck does it get worse? Well, because Mick actually has a guy on his staff that did play-by-play for some of the Cruiserweight Classic in Corey Graves, who is a Cruiserweight, or was a Cruiserweight, was calling some of the Cruiserweight Classic, and is already employed by Raw. So, Corey Graves, hilariously, cuts a bit of a Twitter promo on Mick saying, well, listen, you've already got a fucking play-by-play guy that can already do it. Now, this is where Mick gets into trouble, because unfortunately for Mick, it feels like he's getting to that place where he's forgetting that this is all a work or something, or he's just too tied up in this nice guy gimmick or something. I don't quite understand why he's so punch drunk retarded, but he then replies to Corey Graves in a long form letter on Twitter. Like, he used Tweet Longer so that he could write this big long form letter. It was 6 fucking paragraphs long on how great Corey Graves is as a play-by-play guy, how wonderful Romero and Daniel Bryan did a job, how great the Cruiserweight Classic was in general. And then he closed it off as though he's actually really a manager, which is probably the only thing he did right in this case, because he actually closed it off by saying, you know, the typical manager, go fuck yourself line of, you know, my door's always open, you can come talk to me in private and blah, 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 blah. So out of everything that happened, like, it was your perfect storm of retard. First, Mick puts over Raw or SmackDown. Then Mick puts over the SmackDown main announce guy. Then Mick puts over the SmackDown manager, whatever the fuck, GM. Then Mick puts over the Cruiserweight division, which is actually the one thing he did right. And then Corey Graves throws a wrestling type promo out there for Mick to batter on and have some fun with, which, by the way, is what happens. These guys can't cut promos they want to in the ring, so they'll do these little things on Twitter where they're actually allowed to get away with this shit, because it's not eating up FaceTime on the air. It's not costing Vince any money, so they'll do it on there, but whatever. Then he fucks up because Corey Graves tosses a fucking softball out there for him to belt out of the park, and Mick replies with this weird fucking form letter. It seemed like something that he would do after falling off of a fucking cage through an announce table. It just seemed really fucking weird and stupid. And of course, the closer we get to Christmas, the closer Mick will be to resembling Santa Claus, because he's got a fucking hard on for Santa Claus. For unfortunate as that is. Continuing on a little bit more of WWE. Here's what I'm gonna do. I've only got 2 more things from the WWE. So I'll give you the bad news first, and then I'll leave you with some good news so that you aren't left with the sour taste on your mouth before we move on to Lucha Underground and PWG. How's that? Is that good? All right? Okay. I don't really care. Eva Marie's suspension was up yesterday. That's it. I'm leaving it at that. I'm not going to say it anymore because she's fucking horrible and we all know it. So anyways. However, the good news is Emma's going to be back soon. She was traveling with the show this last week. Now she's been out since her back surgery for a ruptured disc since May 18th. And she's returning a little bit earlier than they thought she would, but that's not unheard of. Wrestlers, I don't know if you know this, tend to be in pretty decent shape. So it should be interesting, and it should I really want to see her back because she only got back to the main roster before she got that ruptured disc injury, and I just want to see her back. Now, Glenn hit something on the head as I was talking about, as I was leaving the dead air there for Eva. Canadian Glenn says, well, remember that Foley thinks he's an author. That's actually a really good point, because one of the things I like to do is I like to read books by wrestlers, or at least books that have been handled really tightly by wrestlers. And Mick Foley had co-authors on all of his books. His books read a lot like when you talk to a 5-year-old kid. I can only give you a 5-year-old kid because it's what it's like when I talk to my daughter. It is a stream of consciousness that is impossible to make any sense out of. So you have to sit there and you have to go, okay, so you mean this and this equals this, and that's where that, okay, so that's that, okay, that's that little bundle of information. Okay, great, we have that what? Okay, wait, what? Slow down, what? Okay, so you got, okay, hold on, we'll just chill. Okay, so you got that. Okay, so do you mean this? Oh, I see, that's what you mean. Oh, okay. So now we got this little bundle of information. Unfortunately, in a book, you can't ask questions back. So Mick Foley's stream of consciousness novels, while I'm sure make a hell of a lot of sense to somebody with Asperger's, to other people that don't have any kind of issue with comprehending words on pages, it is such a fucking annoying stream of consciousness. And listen, I know, like, I enjoyed Steve Austin's book, and I know he had a ghostwriter. Like, I get it. Shawn Michaels had a ghostwriter. I get it. But the thing is that these guys, at least their ghostwriters did them a good service where they said, okay, well, let's do this story, and then that leads into this story, and then leads into this story, because that's a timeline. Mick's books jump all over fucking creation with and none of it makes any sense. And now, listen, don't get me wrong, it's interesting to have him back on Raw, but his segments are unwatchable because he's not all there. He's an old wrestler who doesn't make sense anymore. Have you ever watched a Jesse Ventura interview lately? Like, don't get me wrong, the shit that he's saying isn't exactly wrong. It's his stream of consciousness shit that he throws out there, and then he's so easily derailed by every fucking retard with a microphone. It's impossible to make any intelligible sense of anything he's saying. Anyways, PWG released 13 this week. I watched it like the mark that I am. It started off with Brian Cage and the new Ring of Honor champion Adam Cole. It was a really good match, and it was hilarious. The gimmick of Chris Hero on play-by-play pointing out Adam Cole's size is, the irony isn't lost on people. It's just not funny. But then again, I don't go to Chris Tubbo for comedy. I go to him for wrestling. If I want somebody to make me laugh in wrestling, I want to listen to Colt Cabana's shit. But that being said, the rest of the matches were all pretty interesting and phenomenal. The only the main event was a little bit weird because Jack Sabre Jr. is the champion, and so he was in a championship match against O'Reilly, and that's great. That's really good. It was actually. It wasn't as stiff as it looked, but it was really good. However, after that match was over, Roderick Strong came out and cashed in his rematch for that millisecond, which I'm not even sure. I'm sure that's not in the wrestling rule book. I don't know if this was done because the show was only 2 hours long up until that point. Or if it was done on purpose, but it basically turned into a big schmoz towards the end, and Strong left or whatever. So that's kind of sucks because I kind of like Roderick Strong. But it is what it is. It was an interesting card. My favorite match, even though it was a little bit weird, I really enjoyed the tag team champion match, the Young Bucks versus Hero and JT Dunn as the for the PWG titles. I enjoyed the match. It was long. That's not saying a bad thing or anything, but it was really, really good, and I really enjoyed it. It's I don't know. It's the trouble with it is that it's really fantastic and it's over as fuck, and I really enjoy watching that stuff, especially all the silly little gimmick things that happen during the match. But I do understand that not a lot of people that don't watch wrestling quite as religiously get annoyed by it, and I always want to tell them, just give it a chance. It's fucking hilarious. It's not meant to be taken overly serious. This is not supposed to be a traditional style Greco-Roman match or something like that. This is supposed to be funny and over the top, and I don't know. Sometimes people take things just a little too seriously, I think, and PWG definitely isn't one of the things you take too seriously. That being said, the whole pay-per-view was just random weirdness. You had Adam Cole beating Brian Cage. Roderick Strong beats the Evolve champion Timothy Thatcher. Jeff Cobb, who I've never seen before, but is actually pretty fantastic. He's a pretty big guy, wrestles in a singlet and stuff. He's pretty impressive. Had a great match with Trevor Lee. Chuck Taylor beats Trent, that they're best friends or whatever, so there's a lot of hugging and brotherly love stuff that happened, which was whatever. That wasn't nearly as weird as Marty Scurll beating Sami Zayn, who came to the ring wearing a cat mask and had cat whiskers drawn on his face. And the wrestling fans at ringside, which PWG fans are just quite possibly my favorite thing about wrestling, just in general. And they were chanting every time they wanted to rally behind Sami Callihan. They would chant "meow." Now, I understand that sounds really fucking stupid, but it's really fucking hilarious because nothing seems more counterintuitive to wrestling than fans chanting "meow." But like I said, like the Zack Sabre Jr. beats Kyle O'Reilly, really good match there. Of course, because Zack Sabre Jr. is a European style wrestler, the finish was a submission, a really sick ass looking submission too. By the way, I don't even think I could. It kind of looked like a Widow's Peak, but with an armbar attached, like an armbar thrown in for good measure. I don't know, it was fucking weird looking. But yeah, then Zack Sabre Jr. beats Roderick Strong, and Roderick Strong's done. Now, soon, the Battle of Los Angeles DVDs are going to drop, and when they do, you will not hear from me all fucking week because I will be watching those like a fucking mark that I am. All right, I apologize ahead of time, but that's just what's going to happen. I am an unabashed, sad little mark for that company, and it just is. That's just what's going to happen. Now, Lucha Underground was back again this week. Another solid match or another solid card. Really enjoy watching Lucha Underground, of course. I don't. One of the things that happens with Lucha Underground in general is that it becomes tough to figure out when something has happened and when it goes on. Like, here, I'll explain it to you this way. So last week when Lucha Underground made its return, I was saying how it was great that the ring was cleaner, that it was brighter in there because the windows were open. I just thought all those things were good. And yet the thing is that this week none of that was going on. It was back to being dark. The windows had been covered. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but the But the fact of the matter is that it ended up being a little bit darker in there, which I guess once you got to the main event made a little bit more sense, because it's tough to have a match that they want to have for the main event, which was Killshot versus Marty the Moth, which was more or less a hardcore match. They called it, jokingly or not, a weapon of mass destruction match. But I really enjoy Marty the Moth's gimmick. I mean, I really enjoy it. And yet, I understand that not everyone's into it. I get that not everyone likes the creepy stuff and likes all those other weird things. But it was really quite awesome. And that match probably going up there as one of my favorite ones so far this year. And not just on Lucha Underground, but just like in general. It was Weapons of Mass Destruction match. And there was some weird shit. Don't get me wrong. Listen, Lucha Underground, like I said, is very 80s, very tongue-in-cheek for the most part. But the show kicked off with, and again, this weird fucking thing with Dario Cueto and his prison thing being released or whatever the fuck was just very strange. The first match itself was Mascarita Sagrada versus, was it Dr. Oh, shit. I can't remember his fucking name now. That's horrible. Dr. Wagner. And that was a little bit weird too, because basically, well, it's, I guess a little bit weird is a tough way to say it, but it basically boiled down to the midget doing an awful lot of moves and then the regular sized guy doing a move that led to a win, which is, I mean, it's fine, but it's just a little bit weird. The other thing that was weird was Mil Muertes versus Argentis. I guess for lack, I always hate trying to pronounce that fucking name because it always sucks. But I really enjoy Argentis. It was and when they broke back from they did this flashback thing to 1,000 years ago, and this it was even horrible by my Lucha Underground standards. Like, I give them a lot of passes for a lot of things, but this is horrible. So it flashes back to 1,000 years ago with this old Aztec guy dying and his daughter. The guy looked to be in his 80s and his daughter was 10. So I'm not sure exactly at what point he got sick, but at some point when he was 70, he could fuck a broad and get her knocked up so that he could give birth to a child that can't act. So, like, she kept saying that she kept, crying for her daddy, and it wasn't crying. It was like barely saying the word dad. I don't know. It was really fucking weird. And the reason for it being that police detective or whatever, who's in charge of the two wrestlers that are in the fucking, that Captain Velasquez broad, you don't know if it's her or if it's now Katrina, because then they had Katrina and they both have two parts of that medallion. It looks like it's just been tin snipped in half, which is horrible, but whatever. It's fucking weird. But essentially the match with Mil Muertes and Argentis went over really well, and the whole match got to go on without being, without having any shenanigans going on in it. And then Prince Muma came out and did a run-in on Mil after the fact. So that was actually well done. I didn't mind that so much. So, it is what it is. It's, I've said it before, it's just fucking weird shit. The wrestling, though, is really quite awesome. And the match between Killshot and Marty the Moth, with Killshot going over on Marty the Moth to finally put a wrap on that whole gimmick, was really one of the better matches. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the hardcore things, but they did a lot of pretty clever stuff to keep the guys reasonably safe, which is always a good thing. I hate when they don't do things like, for example, CWZ does definitely not do anything to keep the guys safe, really. But when they have these hardcore matches, every now and then it's kind of interesting to have. Marty was busted open within about 5 seconds, and it it clotted pretty fast too. So it's not like it was sticking around the whole match, but it did a good job of making it entertaining at least. So it was a good match. It was a good show. I still enjoy Lucha Underground a hell of a lot, and I'll just leave it at that for now. Now, I wanted to ask you guys, make sure you guys are checking out the website and checking out the Twitter at Markout Radio, and spread the word around if you guys know wrestling fans and shit like that, want to do that kind of stuff. If you guys know any wrestlers, send them my way, because I'm going to start interviewing some guys. I got a couple guys on the line coming up in a couple of months here, and we'll see how many more I can get my hands on. So that's it for this week. My voice is destroyed, and I am out of here.
Well, that was an abortion of a show. Should the mood take you, check out markoutradio.com and leave a comment. You can also find links there to our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Stitcher channels. You can even leave a voicemail on our Skype. Just click the links and share them.